London then versus now. Wandering Oxford Street through the ages, early morning pours golden light over Oxford Street, the pavements already astir with determined footsteps and snippets of conversation swirling in the crisp air. Double-decker buses glide by, their diesel hum mingling with the quick, laughter-laced exchanges of shoppers threading their way through crowds. Display windows glisten with promises, flickering neon and artful arrangements of handbags and knitwear. Watchers lined up in tidy rows, all vying for attention beneath the slight fog of condensation. Each entrance swings open to a scatter of new fragrances. Fresh bread from the corner bakery, synthetic perfume trailing from coat collars, and the pervasive scent of rain still lingering on woolen scarves. Taxi horns chirp occasionally, muffled by the rhythmic whir of bike spokes and the shouts of porters unloading crates behind department store facades. A gentle urgency hovers, knitted together by the staccato click of heels. The muffled pulse of distant radios broadcasting pop hits. The clamor never falters. Beneath it all lies the anticipation of the day's bargains and discoveries. The unbroken spell of this city's greatest thoroughfare in its prime. Imagine, if you will, shoppers filtering past in the mist of a London morning, where the faint clip-clop of horses pulling drays remains, almost lost under the murmur of wheels on wet cobblestones. The fog lingers low beneath gaslit lamps, their glow painting pockets of soft illumination onto puddles pooled along the curb. Trolleys creak as vendors arrive with crates of apples and piles of newsprint. Their chatter muffled by thick air and the occasional distant bell from a street trader hawking wares. On the pavements, the regulars. Women in layered tweed coats with groceries. Bundled in woven baskets, men pausing to straighten hats and turn up tweed collars. Blend seamlessly with errand boys in woolen. Caps' breaths suspended in plumes that vanish into the chill. Here, the social swirl is gentler, focused, every gesture measured by necessity rather than haste. Market smells drift. Earthy potatoes, sharp cheese, hints of tobacco curling from pipes clamped between teeth. Here and there, the delicate tap of gloved hands on purse clasps and the rustle of wrapping paper as purchases are handed over. Horsehair brushes sweep grit from shop thresholds, while inside, the muffled hum of voices is punctuated by the soft clinking of coins. A milk cart trundles by, its driver waving a gloveless hand to a neighbor, blending sight and sound into a tapestry wrapped tight by the muted, close air of early 20th century London. Electric color races down the high street, bathing the pavements in a new palette. Shop fronts, once sober, now boast bold signage, vivid tubes of argon and neon spelling out brands and bargains that pulse into the evening. Every fascia seems intent on drawing passing eyes. From the brilliant magentas above the chemist to the turquoise and emerald glows of electrical shops. The air is charged. Scents rise in lazy trails from perfumery counters just inside sliding glass doors. Shoppers, some clad in flares and sheepskin jackets, drift through this shifting haze, enveloped now and again by the musky sweetness of department store testers or the bracing tang of aftershave. There is a metallic undertone. The brittle trill of portable radios mingles with engine sputters and a distant whir of a workman's drill. Car radios warble through half-open windows in traffic jams, barely masking the gossamer static threading through top 40 tracks. Slogans shiver and animate on scaffolding banners. Every few yards, a Cineplex or fashion boutique pops with a new explosion of brightness. The road feels wider, somehow, as the post-war optimism finally crystallizes into visible spectacle, transforming the thoroughfare into a stage for hope and buying power. Against this urban backdrop, every footfall is set to a soundscape of commerce. The clatter of shopping trolleys, the snap of carrier bags, the distant but constant swell of songs piped from inside. Through it all, Oxford Street transforms, once practical, now theatrical as the decade ramps up, and 1,000 tiny lights promise a thrilling future at the heart of the city. Between 1978 and 1986, Oxford Street finds its pulse in the rise and bustle of the department store heyday. The gentle hum of escalators forms a silvery undertone, carrying shoppers floor to floor as overhead announcements drift across vast sales halls. Everything feels slightly electric. Underfoot, the cushioning give of patterned carpets absorbs some of the commotion, but polished counters and bright lights sharpen every edge of anticipation. Children press fingerprints onto display cases while parents handle glossy vinyl bags emblazoned with store crests. The distinctive plastic scent mingling with the air-conditioned coolness. There's a brisk chatter all about, punctuated by the click of coin change at tills, and the rustle of paper receipts, as well-dressed assistants dart between rails, draped with novelty knitwear and new season jumpers in peppermint or russet. In the cosmetics department, mirrors catch shifting faces, and voices are measured, almost reverent, above the background whir. On the higher floors, furniture showrooms are hushed and aspirational, a contrast to the vibrant jumble below. From the food hall, hints of strong coffee and glazed pastries mix unexpectedly with the sharp temps of polished wood floors. Conjuring a mid-morning hunger, shoppers trail after one another, vinyl bags bellied out with half-remembered purchases. The subtle, static crackle as hands brush against synthetic coats lingers long after departing through the revolving doors. Each moment is saturated in the texture and rhythm of retail, all movement and muffled excitement. As the unspoken promise of sale bargains and seasonal trends brings even the most reserved visitors into this roaring microcosm, where once Oxford Street exuded a sort of studied bustle and soft-lit anticipation, by the mid-1980s the very atmosphere seemed to spark and shimmer with a wholly different energy. Shop fronts now fronted by endless panes of glass reflected a new cosmopolitan glare. The throng pressed forward beneath looping banners and scrolling LED signs, their footsteps drowned out by the digital chatter and the bass throb leaking from flagship stores. The air teemed with the deep-frosted aroma drifting from ever busier coffee stalls, the tanginess of international blends mingling above the constant shuffle. Gaggles of visitors from every corner of the globe jostled with locals, animated by the lure of global brands that had begun to crowd out local idiosyncrasies. In every direction, the mechanical whir and click of suitcases with hard plastic wheels underscored the perpetual migration not just of shoppers but of students, tourists, and business folk threading their way through the labyrinth of pavement. The brightness stings slightly, with illuminated advertisements tumbling across facades, and the air is electric with choice, from the quick metallic clink of coins into takeaway tills, to the scatter of paper flyers pressed into busy hands. Staff, sporting crisp uniforms bearing the latest logos, dash between racks that seem perpetually restocked with global fashions. No single store diminisher, patchwork of chain shops and flagship showcases vies for attention, each lit to outshine the next. Escaping from the thick surge momentarily, one can almost hear the faint echo of previous years, buried beneath the building rattle of construction and swelling traffic. But the present insists itself. Illuminated billboards blinking, queues twisting across pavement stones, and conversations rising above it all in a dozen languages, closing out the last chapters of Oxford Street's more parochial past. As the year edged towards its close between 1978 and 1986, Oxford Street was swept into a revelry impossible to ignore. Each November, crowds assembled beneath a canopy of glittering illuminations, all eyes lifted as the Suishon bathed the thoroughfare in a constellation of electric sparkle. The first notes of festive jingles, piped from hidden speakers and echoing through department doorways, mingled with the laughter of children and the crisp anticipation that hung in the winter air. Everyone seemed to draw closer, the usual busy shuffle slowed by wonder and togetherness. Steam rose from curbside stalls, ladling out mulled wine, filling the evening with hints of orange peel, cinnamon, and cloves, turning breaths into clouds as passers-by wrapped their fingers around warm cups. Carolers' voices lingered, harmonizing above the distant cheer of street performers and the occasional shrill of a police whistle, all beneath banners strung overhead. On parade evenings, floats drifted past festooned with sequined characters and cheerful Santas casting colored shadows onto the faces pressed to the edge of the curb. Parents hoisted children up for a better view, cheeks flushed by the brisk December breeze, their eyes bright with excitement as streamers fluttered and confetti tumbled earthward like tiny snowflakes. The street's usual dazzling commerce momentarily paused as spectacle overtook the daily pursuit of bargains. Even shop windows appeared to shimmer with greater promise, reflecting every burst of seasonal light. Here, in these fleeting weeks, Oxford Street became a shared living room where strangers bonded over the pleasure of ritual, the tingling foretaste of holiday generosity, and the nostalgic scents and sounds that briefly transformed the cityscape into something intimate and enchanted. The era from 1978 to 1986 on Oxford Street offered a curious tension between the comfort of routine and the electric charge of change. Echoing footsteps traced their way between stores, sometimes solitary and contemplative, sometimes merging with the insistent city pulse that inhabited every brick and pavement joint. Smudged brick bore the stains of decades, scars beside the newly minted shop fronts, evidence of time both eroded and reimagined. There was something quietly relentless about the cycles of arrivals and departures, the rise of new brands and the slow fading of beloved local shops. You could sense a collective breath held in the city's rhythm, a half-mourned loss for the familiar, a tentative embrace of the cosmopolitan new. The soundscape pulsed with progress. Yet a moment lingered in the gaps between the crowds, the soft scrape of soles, a silent witness to shifting values and identities. Modern signage promised novelty, but the weight of history remained embedded in each tile beneath one's feet. To reflect upon this period is to notice how the honesty of weathered surfaces of the city's accumulated stories stood in quiet contrast to the feverish forward motion. Traditions weren't washed away so much as painted over, and a different tempo, occasionally jarring, occasionally exhilarating, came to define the heart of London's commercial life. Amidst this, memory persists, tethered to the hum of routine, the graffiti along alleyway walls, and the subdued glow that occasionally slipped free from the nightly rush. As evening descends across Oxford Street between 1978 and 1986, let your imagination step onto its wide pavement, swept along by the current of passing faces. Every expression flashes briefly in the city's moving mosaics, some hopeful, some world-weary, each one sharing these hours under the same stream of shop light washed onto the concrete. The persistent undertone of the urban murmur, bus engines idling, footsteps blending with soft voices, echoes off the walls, a constant reminder of late-night London's restless rhythm. Pause beneath the canopy of shop fronts and inhale the distinctive night air, tinged with distant petrol and warming food from obscured corners. Listen to the rise and fall of invisible stories, as strangers brush by and friends link arms, laughter floating in snatches above the subdued drone. This moment is yours. Imagine yourself among them, drawn into the living flow of a city shifting quietly after sundown, where every glance and muted sound invites you deeper into Oxford Street's unforgettable twilight walk.